Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World, where I am your host, Kane Sims, as always. And as always, we will have an epic conversation today about the future of AI powered customer experience. Before we get into that, and before we welcome our guest today, who is the CEO of UJET, Anand Janefalkar, and UJET have got some immense traction over the last couple of years, I would say, making some really big waves in the contact center and customer experience space. Partnership with Google, CCAI, and got a real good overview of all of the trends, emerging trends in customer experience automation. And so we'll definitely get into that. But before we do that, a shout out to our presenting sponsors today on VUX World. That is Deepgram and Symbl.ai. So if you are, which I'm sure you are, because most of the people that listen to this podcast are in a position where they are creating conversational applications on a regular basis, chatbots, voice bots, and things like that. One of the biggest trends in that space is the creation of voice assistants and voice capabilities for call centers. And if you are doing that, you need the right kind of technology. And Deepgram provide a really crucial component to that, which is the automatic speech recognition part. Speech recognition, if you don't get that right, then what you're feeding into the rest of your model is rubbish. So you need to get the speech recognition element right. With Deepgram, you can actually customize and retrain those models to make it really specific for your domain, which means that if you work in banking or insurance or finance or retail, then how people talk about your products and services is going to be different depending on the industry that you're in. The ability to customize that speech recognition model is absolutely crucial. There's a whole bunch of other features that Deepgram have. It's very cost effective. It is very highly accurate. And so if you are in the market for speech recognition, do check out deepgram.com/VUX World. Our other sponsor is Symbl.ai, which I would say has some of the most impressive technology that I've probably ever seen. It is absolutely amazing. You can see just how easy it is to add simple but powerful call coaching and agent assist functionality, call tracking functionality to your customer experience solutions with Symbl.ai. It's got customizable APIs. It's conversational intelligence, essentially. You can use it in calls, you can use it in videos, you can use it on text conversations, and it is literally best in class contextual AI, and you can get it up and running in no time. And you can get started for free by going to Symbl.ai, Symbl.ai. Some of the stuff that Symbl is able to create or enables you to create, because ultimately the power is in your hands, is absolutely immense. You can get to data within conversations that you didn't even know existed. Things like being able to do outbound dialing, detect voicemails, recognize when a beep in a voicemail has occurred to be able to leave a pre-recorded answer phone message, or to be able to escalate to an agent when someone actually picks up. That sounds really trivial, but the amount of organizations that spend a hell of a lot of money on outbound dialing just to try and get voicemails and people that don't pick up or recognize when to transfer a call to an agent is unbelievable, and being able to automate that is absolutely crucial. Automatic transcripts of conversations, summarization of conversations, stripping out action points and stuff like that for meetings and stuff like that, building your own agent assist capabilities that rolls up Nespex actions and all that kind of stuff for agents in the contact center dashboard. It's absolutely impressive stuff. So do check out Symbl.ai, Symbl.ai, if you want to explore the value of conversational intelligence for your business. Now, without further ado, I'm sure we'll touch on some of this stuff in today's conversation with the CEO and founder of UJET, Anand Janefalkar. Anand, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. UJET is on an absolute mission, I would say. It's making some real big waves. It's kind of like, always up there and cited. If you look at any publications of contact center leaders and cloud contact center and customer experience leaders and stuff like that, UJET's always there, and you're kind of doing pretty well. So congrats on the success, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that we're kind of finally seeing the traction that, in terms of the audience that we want to reach. We started off pretty stealthily, and the reason for that was we wanted to take a subset of our addressable market and really go deep into all of the operational aspects and not just the marketing and selling motions of it. So we stayed a little bit quiet in the early years, but now that we have a lot of conviction as well as case studies about the success with our customers, we are amplifying that quite a bit. And thank you for this platform to continue to do that.
No worries, no worries. So where did it start? Well, first of all, actually, maybe let's explain for people what UJET is and
Yeah.
what it does. That's probably a better place to begin.
Yeah, so UJET is an end-to-end contact center customer experience platform. I know the definition of customer experience has been changing over the years, and rightfully so. But essentially, whenever a company needs to communicate with their customers, whether these are customers that they're potential customers, they're trying to sell new services, or all the way to retaining them and providing them value, as well as providing them accurate ways to utilize the platform and the different features of it, that's where UJET comes into play. We take deep looks into what the three user sets that formulate this customer experience equation are looking for. So what the end user, the agent or the advocate, whether it's virtual agent or human agent, and then finally the contact center stakeholders, which include the directors, supervisors, as well as the IT team. So that is what UJET does, is kind of formulates this end-to-end hyper-personalized experience for our customers, and we'll obviously get more into it as we speak.
Definitely, definitely. So where did it come from then? How did you kind of, yeah, where did it all come from and how did you create it? I suppose is following on from that.
Yeah, so I had a little bit of a different journey, I've been told, than folks that typically get into the sector. I was always fascinated with wireless communications. There's this particular event of watching a movie with a car phone, and in those days, cordless phones, that particularly piqued my interest. And I very early on decided that I want to build these devices. So it went from cordless phones, car phones, to the cellular phones, and what is today the smartphone. So did my master's in telecommunications, researched at some of the top companies, at least in those days, and then spent a long time at Motorola building 3G devices, as well as the infrastructure that feeds into them. What I figured out as I went through that journey, and a couple of other companies that I worked for after that, is that the world is experiencing a tremendous macro shift, and people are starting to communicate visually and contextually. They're not looking at these connection points, which were limited by the devices, right? The phone was typically just a phone and just did audio. The pager was just a notification system for most of the time with the limited responses, and then the chat was really localized to your desktop browser. With the shift into smartphones, what I saw is that people are very just naturally communicating visually and contextually. And when I thought about I was always very entrepreneurial and wanted to start my own thing. And when I thought about a major problem that I face, which you can probably empathize with the spelling of my last name, it's very difficult to spell on a customer support call to get a return email. And it's none of the agent's fault, and we'll get into how we solve that. But also that the only time two humans communicate in a non-visual and non-contextual manner was customer support. So I felt that despite not having the typical journey going into the contact center world, I felt that I had the bits and elements of what the modern communication between humans and human interaction a future looks like. And that was it. That's when I decided to start UJET. And we have a very different take on what just conversations mean. A lot of times in our sector, conversations typically mean just speaking to each other. But if you really delve deep into it, right? I mean, you and I are talking, and let's say we're talking as friends or family. We a lot of times today take for granted the tools that are at our disposal when we're communicating through our smartphones. A lot of times we'll share our reservation, we'll share our location, we'll share photos and videos, we'll take some metadata that might be a copy paste from one of the apps that we're using, and we send to each other. So conversations have evolved, and they're no longer just audio. And it's natural, right? Because we communicate, interact with all of our senses, the speech, audio, visuals, touch, and all of that. And I think that's going to keep evolving. So what we really over indexed on is how do we provide that multidimensional and fluid omnichannel experience to mimic a little bit more of how we interact in real life, because what we felt is the recipe for disaster for a lot of times why customer support and agents kind of get dinged for is that you're taking those two humans. One is frustrated or flustered or anxious because something is not working in a product, a bill is not being paid properly, or there's charges that they don't recognize. And then the agent that is on the other side, and this person has already gone through the chatbots and find a way to escape those to talk to a live person because they're frustrated and anxious. And then you're taking that agent, which in normal life is communicating visually and contextually, and right now just has to deal with the anger and sentiment of that particular customer. So we felt that providing that tool, providing that multidimensional just ability to understand what the issue is, what led to this, what is the metadata, what can they capture and put in that customer record, which is auditable, and then provide a solution for that, whether it's a refund, whether it's a return label for a shipping package, so on and so forth. So that is where I felt there was really a big opportunity, and I did not see anyone kind of going there because the backgrounds for how people are evolving into it are very different. So I think some shape or form, the journey and experience of the products that I've worked on in the past kind of led me to taking this to this sector and helping ensure that we're not just dinging people just because they are in the position that they are, but we're providing them all of the ammunition and experience that they deserve to solve the problem effectively.
Interesting. And you do have a unique approach to that kind of, like you mentioned there, conversations changing
Mhm.
over time. And you're right, like if I was gonna meet my wife or whatever somewhere, 9 times out of 10, I'll send a snapshot of the map where I'm at rather than trying to text exactly my location and stuff like that. So I wonder if you can talk around a little bit of some of the experiences that UJET enables, because I know that you do have a tightly knit kind of mobile and contact center kind of like work together in harmony and so on. So I'm wondering if you might be able to give us an example of some of the use cases that clients are enabling with UJET.
Totally, and that's exactly right. When you are interact with friends and family, you're very digitally acquainted. You have gotten used to certain interactions that you just kind of take for granted, right? And a lot of times, and this goes back into the connection points argument, where the evolution of conversations and the evolution of the contact center, a lot of times, yes, we're going towards the understanding what the sentiment and what the voice is saying. However, the metadata is extremely powerful. I would say that is an extrapolation of the age-old saying that a picture speaks 1,000 words, but the metadata adds to that. And so what we see is, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is that end users are connecting to products and services through different connection points. A lot of times it's through the app. And there's a reason why travel companies give you 3x points when you go through a mobile app as opposed to just their desktop browser. It's because they can get more information and they can more personalize and curate their journey for you. At least that's what they say. And so the connection points have evolved from just picking up the phone and calling to going through the experience through the app or pulling up a mobile browser or desktop browser and then going through that experience, or just knowing that there's a phone number, whether you're going to your favorite search engine and looking for a connection point, or it's the number at the back of your credit card or the number on the box of the drone that you purchased and just calling in. What we believe is that these three different connection points do not need to be distinctly different in terms of their experiences. People are expecting the same smartphone era experience, regardless of where they're connecting from. So we have a very tightly knit, so we have iOS and Android SDKs that sit within the client company's app. That way, you're not suddenly going from an interaction with the app and getting thrown into something that you may not recognize or really trust to have a conversation and provide any personal information on there. So they're very tightly knit. Think of this as mobile banking, right? When you're in mobile banking today, people are very much used to taking a picture of a check and depositing this. This is very sensitive information. It has your account number, it has your name, it has your address, it has the money aspect involved. And we've gotten really used to those things because we know that mobile check deposit picture stays within that app, is just directly going from your app encrypted into a system on the back end. It doesn't even go to your camera or camera roll. So it's that tightly knit of an iOS and Android SDK, and those stay within the confines of that app experience, the same security that you're used to and have grown to trust. It doesn't go beyond those bounds. Then the web page experience, right? A lot of times you're logged in, you have certain information that gets rendered onto your screen just because of your user segment and because of your login information. Our web SDK sits in there, and there's a lot of intelligence that's tied into your current session to provide that seamless session continuity, whether it's a virtual agent as well as a human agent. And then finally, the ability to take a very traditional old IVR call when someone's calling from their smartphone, the ability to get that opt-in for an SMS, and using that SMS and deep linking technology for the smartphone, just completely transforming that experience to not just stay on that very plain analog channel, but bringing that into the blended omni-channel stuff. That is another aspect of our platform. So what we do is to try and blend these in a fashion where you're getting the most effective outcome. And then you're also optimizing for agent efficiency, peak hour traffic, as well as not asking the questions that you probably already have in the customer record with the deep tie-in into backend systems.
Interesting. Yeah, so what do you you mentioned that you alluded there that customers expect this kind of like mobile experience regardless of the channel of choice and stuff like that. What do you think is driving some of that stuff? I wonder if you can kind of elaborate on what you're seeing from a end, because you mentioned there's three groups: end user, agent, and
Right.
stakeholder. Starting with that kind of end user,
Yeah.
what do you think is driving those expectations? Is it the fact that Amazon is just so good at shopping and people's expectations are shaped from that? That's always been my kind of theory, is that people get used to experiencing an iPhone and the operating system, and therefore your expectations of future operating systems are built off the back of that. Like, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on what do you think
Yeah.
is driving some of this
No,
expectation shift?
very good question. And I think it's just how things have evolved from, I would say, 2006, 2007, when the smartphones just came onto the marketplace. And yeah, it's Amazon, it's Google, it's Microsoft. There's just tons. I think it would be very unfair to other brands that we're not pointing them out. But if you look at even something like a Yelp, right? You're going into, at least here in the States, you're going and searching for a restaurant that your buddy has told you that it has just amazing sushi. And you go in there, and one of the things that you probably trust are the reviews from Yelp, and you click on that link. The first thing you see is like, do you want to open this in your app? And I think that experience, that deep linking experience, which kind of takes you into the app experience, and then tells you like, hey, this is what that looks like. This is how far it is where you're from, and all of that information is just prefetched and provided to you, because within the confines of that app, the API hooks that you have, all of those are kind of tying the experience together, and that's what you've grown to love, right? And you can select what you want to share and not want to share. So I don't necessarily think that this is kind of an intrusion to your privacy. It's basically the selections that you're making, and there's other selections that you might have made that are arguably a lot more kind of not safe. However, going back to your question, those are the experiences that we have, right? You brought up Amazon. You go to you look for your favorite football team's jersey, and one of the first links that come up could possibly be Amazon, or could be your favorite shopping site, and you click on that, and it asks you whether you want to start this experience. And in their website, asks you to log in their app, asks you to log in if you're not already logged in, or log in with your Face ID, Touch ID. So that is the experience that we kind of continue to build on, and people are digitally acquainted for those experiences. And we asked, how do our customers use this, right? I mean, let's say you're using a wellness device, and you brought the latest version of that tracker. It also has a bunch of different information of how you're sleeping and breathing and what are best practices, and you're just not able to use certain aspects of it. So when you start that conversation within that app, a lot of the metadata, a lot of the information that you're kind of already housing within that app is kind of taken into, depending on the route that you're taking to reach to customer support or to a technician or to your fitness coach. So taking that information without asking, like, hey, Kane, did you really wake up 10 times last night? And all of that information is already there. And getting a snapshot of that is really powerful. I'll tell you further examples about travel, which is a perfect kind of use case for this. And if you look at it, so let's say you want to, things are getting better in terms of travel. You want to go to Paris, for example. However, you know that you also wanted to go to Brussels. So you're looking at all of this through the app, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and book this trip. And a web page doesn't necessarily just have to be app. And you're going through that journey, and then you're hitting a certain kind of issue, and you start communicating with the customer support. You're going through, let's say, a chat. You get connected to a virtual agent, and you're using all these the great technology for recognizing accurate languages, accurate intent, and so on and so forth. But the ability to get that deep API calls into what your past several wireframes that you might have traversed, and have that virtual agent say, like, all right, Ken, looks like I have the information that I need. There was your credit card had expired. That's why we're hitting this snag. Thank you for updating that. I can go ahead and book the travel to Paris. However, I saw that you searched for a route through Brussels. Would you like me to proceed with that instead? I think that is magic. And you provide an experience like that. That is the sure way of creating customer loyalty. I can go further with the financial advisors case, or even healthcare case, where you're really anxious and you want to go in for an X-ray. You're really hoping that you haven't broken your toe because you have a very important football match coming up. And
you said we weren't going to mention football, and you mentioned it twice so far.
I know, and the winter really gets that the sports thing going. I mean, you want to be mobile, but you can't be, and that's why those are coming up. You're really hoping that this X-ray turns back negative. You're calling your nearest provider, and they're collecting a bunch of information. But it just feels that experience seems so frustrating. They're like, hey, we can't locate. You probably have changed your phone number. We can't locate your account. The ability not only to accurately recognize that and have the right intent, the right training models, the right kind of just breadth of that particular NLU engine, the artificial intelligence without intelligent automation, in our opinion, can be really lackluster. So that is how we're helping our customers, and that's why we're seeing the success in terms of our customers' satisfaction ratings is kind of attributed to that.
Interesting. It's interesting because on that customer experience side of things, it's like where you've got, let's say let's use Amazon as the example, or whoever else, X retailer or X brand that provides a really good customer experience, spends millions or trillions or whatever it is on really thinking about that customer journey and nailing that customer experience. And then you go and use, let's bring the football reference in again. Let's say you go and try and buy a football ticket for your local team, which is nowhere near the size of company that some of these other companies have nowhere near the level of, I would say, maybe technological sophistication, perhaps internal capabilities and skills to be able to provide an experience that is really kind of like what people would expect. I mean, what you're talking about here is like real deep contextual awareness over the current user situation, their immediate previous behavior, past previous behavior, a thorough understanding of their in situ needs in real time, being able to tailor an experience towards that. This is all stuff that an average organization just doesn't have that level of data. So I'm curious about, one, who is your kind of like ultimate customer, and is part of UJET's value in being able to bring that capability to organizations like football clubs who traditionally wouldn't really know where to start with some of this stuff?
Yeah, great. I'm really glad you brought that question to the fore, because a lot of times we talk about the end user experience, and the agent experience, but we miss out the most important kind of part of the equation, which is the stakeholders, which is the organization, which is probably the IT team, as well as the contact center directors and VPs. So absolutely, yes, it is not a lost group of focus that we have. And UJET is designed so that the journey for this particular group is also very simplified. What we have set up for bringing these experiences to the fore is a very simple modern UI, modern user experience based approach to setting up these queues, setting up the data dips, and setting up the just the plumbing to these websites. Now, football clubs and all of the others, they have made the transition to having their web pages. They have made the transitions to having their mailing lists and so on and so forth. We're not talking about the late 90s or the early 2000s where you're still picking up the phone and calling these folks to, like, I'll be at the will call to window and pick up my ticket. Those experiences are yesteryears, right? Today, they already have made that transition, but your question is extremely accurate. It's like, how do these stakeholders take that additional piece and embed it in that user journey, which is right now just being used for notifications or the end step of purchasing the ticket? So that is so as a stakeholder, it's extremely straightforward. You can select whether you want to just modernize your IVR and add that blended layer of SMS components to it, whether you want to use that as an inbound, as outbound, whether you want to use that for any changes in the matches that might have gotten postponed or might have getting rescheduled, all that. But furthermore, blending this experience depending on the situation and the urgency and complexity of that situation. That is what we really provide with our admin portal and user experience that we have taken a lot of care of over there. You do not need a PhD in Visio just to formulate these call flows. You do not need to understand whether you're hitting dead ends by trying to try it out. We have the intelligence built in when an admin goes into their admin portal journey to set up these things, which are very, very simple. If you look at it at the end, as humans, we are simplistic beings whenever we want to buy something or we want to go to an event. And the ability to take where they left that particular past interaction and where they're going through. Setting this up is one of the things that we get the most kudos for. Implementation times, where you do not need an army of people to set up something that should be so simple, and we're in 2022 now. So we absolutely take care of that kind of user persona and ensure that what they need and the steps that they need to take to go to the future state of their contact center. Most of them are not going to be ready to disrupt everything and like, no, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to get to the 2030 vision that I have of my customer experience. No one's going to do that. And so having that deep understanding as product designers, smartphone app creators, user experience developers, that the mechanism of CI/CD, the mechanism of the blue-green releases, that you can sequentially go step by step into these functions, maybe find a logistically separable unit or even an agent team that you want to start this with, and then flow that into the others. Maybe start off with an overflow system that if you have a group of agents that have been trained to take these conversations from the virtual agent in a seamless manner and see how they are understanding it and whether they are feeling more empowered to solve these questions, and then furthermore rolling it out to the rest of the organization. These are things that are out of the box. These are the things, if you are on any popular CRMs, or if you have a homegrown CRM, or if you have your customer data in a specific database that is extremely secure with APIs that need to be accessed to get that past state of conversation that you mentioned. All of those things are out of the box. And what we see, the folks that are on an implementation session with UJET, they greatly love that. And they really feel that they can focus more on creating that journey in an effective manner, as opposed to just kind of scratching their heads and what do I need to do, and who do I need to deploy, and what timeline am I looking at? Those kind of questions go out of the window.
Interesting. I suppose the art of the possible is sometimes difficult, isn't it? And once you get used to something, it starts taking that incremental stepping stone approach. Is let's learn about this core bit. Okay, what have you
Exactly.
add increment? As you kind of grow, you learn, you develop, and all of a sudden you're deploying pretty sophisticated stuff
Right.
in time.
And if I may add, the end-to-end thing matters, right? What it allows you to do is, because it is not designed as an analog system with voice, and then you kind of have these hacked-on systems for chat or SMS, because it's designed that the routing engine was blended omnichannel from day one. It allows you to see, like, hey, I sent this to a virtual chat first. But the next time that I took a different agent team and they finished their training and they're starting to utilize this platform, I had the voice channel implemented, and it did not use a virtual agent. And what did that look like? And what was the sentiment for there? And what was the end CSAT, which again is completely deeply embedded within the program. Furthermore, what does the agent gamification system say? Did they take longer sessions on voice or chat or SMS, or was it shorter? All of that being a part of the same platform with that same reporting dashboard, your business intel, your BI teams, your data scientists can run through these very effectively and then provide you that output. So it's extremely exciting.
Mm. You've mentioned various NLP components over the last kind of half hour or so. Sentiment analysis you touched on there. You talk about virtual agents, chatbots, voice bots, and you also said, I forget the exact phraseology you mentioned, but something like AI without process automation. Is that the phrase? AI without process automation?
AI without intelligent automation, AI without IA, if you want to
Yeah,
play
yeah, yeah,
those
yeah. Fair enough.
letters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm wondering whether we can shine a bit of light on the role that AI plays within this kind of like omni-channel native customer experience situation.
Yeah. So you mentioned our partnership with Google. One of the things that really excited us about the whole platform is the AI with IA, right, with intelligent automation. And we're strong believers that just utilizing AI and intelligence in just particular just pieces or aspects of that journey, yeah, you can probably embellish that journey a little bit, but it's not going to lead to a effective and a predictable outcome. So having the ability to have over 3,000 intents, having the ability to have each intent have over 2,000 kind of outcomes and training models that you can attach to, having various different languages and accents that you can kind of take care of, so that it really feels like conversational. I think you alluded to that at the beginning of the session, and I think that is super super important. But then taking that and really very seamlessly being able to fetch that information that you already have in your customer record, the intelligent automation that goes along with it, the ability to have that particular AI engine look at what those pieces of metadata, whether there's our alphanumerical, whether they're just phrases, taking those and basically amalgamating that into the narrative that you're providing to the end user, I think puts the end user with a lot of comfort. And furthermore, if I may sidestep a little bit, if you look at where the worst experiences are, and where do they start? If you really look deeply, why customer experience is so important and the sectors that they're so important, and then you delve down into what are the two top things what people are really getting frustrated. One is because they're not able to use the product or service in a way that it was advertised to them. And two, that they are being charged for something that they did not expect. If you just take these two pieces and apply AI as well as intelligent automation by listening to them. Furthermore, if you delve down and look at independent research, a lot of, I would say over 65% of customers felt that they were not listened to before the call. And so what we have devices, what we call as pre-session smart actions. Smart actions is our patented system of obtaining this metadata in an effective and automated and secure manner. These pre-session things, the customer feels like we're listening to them before the conversation is forced upon them, because they don't know where to go, and they give up on the social media or DMs, and they just call in because they feel that's just the primary way that they can really get a hold of a person. You take that and then you apply these pieces of conversational AI you kind of blend all of these together and you still look at the sentiment. You look at whether this conversation is leading to an effective step of what you expect it to go towards. And if you don't see that, bring in that human agent for their experience, empathy, and intuition, so that you're not losing this customer because of just not getting a resolution. And what you see is that if you achieve first touch resolution, you can retain that customer over 70% of the time. And in fact, most of them will be repeat buyers, or they'll do repeat business with you.
Interesting. Interesting that you mentioned when you talk about intelligent automation, are you talking about that example you gave there of like an assistant or a virtual agent that is able to look into either the UJET platform or piggyback through the UJET platform into a CRM system and extract data that would essentially bring more context or more personalized experience to the customer interaction? Or are you talking about like fulfilling a task and automating a process off the back end? Like if someone wants to know why was I charged for this thing, one thing would be to run into the system, system
Yep.
of record, tell them why. That would be
Yep.
one way of automating a question answer kind of thing. But another
All of
form
the
of automation. Okay, so it's the whole. So it's the
It's the
whole
whole
thing.
thing. Yeah. So again, we're strong believers that the urgency and complexity of the situation should dictate the channel and the platform, the journey, as opposed to the other way around. Just because you've only implemented a chatbot does not mean everyone that's going to chat is getting a chatbot, and anyone that's getting frustrated and then calling in is getting a human agent. We believe that it just depends on the urgency and complexity of the situation and how that user is kind of transitioning through that journey. So if you have, let's say you're trying to get a delivery for, let's say, for a propane tank, which is something that you might have in your backyard, and you are seeing that you're just not able to get that delivery scheduled. So, and for whatever reason, the website or whichever channel you're trying to reach into is not able to find what the issue is. So you end up calling in, or you end up clicking on that chat bot over there, and they're like, "Hey, Kane, I see that you're reaching out to us from the scheduling page. Let me go ahead and look at your account." And then they'll find like, hey, again, let's just use the same example where your credit card's expired, or your new address is outside of our delivery zone, or should I change your default store where this delivery is coming from, or the warehouse where this is coming from? Those things can be done with intelligent automation, with the data dips, with the contextual information that you already have at hand because of our SDK that's at that web page or inside that app. And then kind of that conversation continues. And if that is just solving your issue by itself and your sentiment score stays high, there is no need to bring in a human agent. However, if you see that, hey, like my credit card is actually updated, and I'm still not able to do this, and they sense that in your sentiment, they sense the words that you're using, or the repetition of the same phrases being made. Sometimes as humans, if we feel someone's not understanding it, we just repeat it, and we repeat it in an increasing manner of intensity and volume. Sensing that, and then saying like, hey, let me connect you to a specialist. And then the specialist finds out, is like, hey, sorry, Ken, we just saw that you have everything looks good. It's just that we needed the new CV code, or the three digit or 4-digit code, so that we can put a temporary authorization and then go with the purchase. So it is all of the above, and it is driven by the urgency and complexity of the situation. And if you're looking for a pre-certification for a CT scan, you probably want to bring that empathy, that human touch sooner than later. If you're looking at wealth management solutions, you maybe want to bring that sooner than later. So the platform allows for all these knobs, right? These are not just coarse knobs that you turn on and off. These are fine-tuning knobs that you really want to understand. As a consumer, how would you like to go about the experience? And just use that as a yardstick to measure how you would want to set that experience for your customers.
Mm. That's a really nice way of approaching that, because I think that it's a nice to get your perspective on it, because sometimes when we spend a lot of time talking to technology providers that specialize really in that kind of AI side, the NLP side, and a lot of practitioners that specialize in that as well. Whereas I think that what's missing, I think broadly speaking, in that space, I would say it's a massive generalization because it doesn't apply everywhere, but it's that missing link of making every part of a conversation contextual. Like as you said, a chatbot is all well and good, but if a chatbot always begins with "Hi, I'm a chatbot. I can help with this. How do you need help?" But you're already on a product page. You've got stuff in your basket. There's
Yeah,
something that's bothering you about
yeah,
proceeding. Then arguably that chatbot should pick up exactly as you described. Okay, I can see you've got these three things in your basket. You're almost here. Like, is it a problem
yeah.
with this or this? Like, and making that, using the data that's available to make every piece of automated interaction contextual and personalized.
Right, and you hit the nail right on the head, right? You go into that shopping experience, and sometimes they even ask you for multi-factor authorization. What is that code that you see at the bottom of the page? I mean, if you're able to ask that for just one aspect of it, then you already know that it is not the deficiency of the web page. It is not the deficiency of that user journey. It is the deficiency of not being able to carry that context and that information and the past wireframes that you've traversed onto your customer support conversation. So yeah, it's extremely important to look at this as an overall experience as opposed to bits and pieces that you want to hack together to say like, oh, this part looks good, and I've just tried to help normalize the peak hour curve going into it. Well, guess what? That peak hour curve is going to come after an hour that you expect, because all of these people that are going into that chatbot experience getting frustrated and what you're thinking is deflected are actually not getting resolved. They are just getting deflected and then calling into a primary mode of conversation. So it is important to measure these. And that is why the admin journey that you brought up is so important, because they are the ones that are measuring this as well, and formulating whether or not the sequential step-by-step rollout that they're doing is actually making sense to the audience that they're trying to cater this for.
That's really good. One of the things that I can imagine that some of the challenges that organizations might face when they try and do this kind of stuff, because I've come across a lot of them in the past, is that one is availability of data. You need to have the data somewhere if you're going to do something with it. And sometimes, you've mentioned a couple of industries there, banking, healthcare. A lot of those type of organizations have kind of legacy on-prem systems, not really easy to get access to. And I know that you've mentioned kind of like solutions to that. But then the other thing is that this kind of like omni-channel kind of like situation where we're using the capabilities of the device that we happen to have at hand to our benefit. For example, a mobile device in an app, and being able to send even just something as simple as a screenshot to the person who's on the live chat with you so they can actually see what's going on, or whatever it might be. Kind of, or you said about checks, sending a picture of a check, or
Mhm.
I'm going through a mortgage application right now and I have to go to the solicitor with
Yeah.
physical documents that I've had to go online to download and then email to my wife so that she can print it out at work. She then
Yeah.
brings it back and I have to actually physically go down to the office to hand in the paper. And so one of the challenges, especially in that industry, other regulated industries and other organizations with a degree of tradition or culture that have policies in place that would prevent some of this stuff, is that getting the business to a point where it will agree that actually we're happy to send a check in an app, or we're happy to send this proof of ID digitally, is also a bit of a challenge. I'm wondering whether you can shed some light. One, would you agree with those challenges? And have you got any other examples of some of the challenges that organizations might face when they try and do something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to go into bits and pieces of information that you just provided there. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually feel that there is, and I don't think it is just being lethargic that these organizations are just being lazy and not doing. I think it is either they've been jaded by past experiences, and then also because of data retention and security policies. So, like you said, you're downloading these documents. It's not like you had these tucked away in your attic somewhere and you had to procure them. You're downloading these. So these are coming from a digital origin point. So they're already either on the cloud or all that. The maybe the urgency of having those documents on the cloud or in a digital manner, whether or not it's an on-prem system that's connected to the internet or not, that has already taken place. I think what's the missing pieces is understanding where these experiences come through. So I'll give you a couple of ways that our customers have either faced this and kind of gone past that. So understanding the connection points is very important, right? So the end user, again, is very much in the digital era. Like let's agree that that is the actual case. You don't have these documents stored somewhere in there in a bookshelf. So they're already starting from there. The agent and advocate or the specialist or the solicitor, all of these, let's say that this is the face of the business entity that you're trying to get the problem solved. They are also connected to a computer. It's very unlikely that this person is not in front of a computer or doesn't have access to a computer. So they already are. So I think the missing piece is the connection between them, and that is why we strongly emphasize that when you're looking for a customer experience provider, you're not just looking for someone to make these two endpoints meet, because when they try to just connect these two user personas, they're just literally connecting them. And they're just connecting them, and their sales pitch is like, we have connected this in the past, that's why you should connect this. Well, guess what? The human interaction has changed since you last updated your stack or rewrote it for the cloud. It is a completely new interaction model. So I think that is where the deficiency is. The second one, if I may, is not just the product and engineering or the UX side of it, but it's also the business side of it. Some of these organizations, because they came from a very metered stack in the past, from the 90s or the early 2000s, their business side is forced to go with a metered approach. So everything that they do is metered. They do not want it to be take that PDF that you downloaded from here. Do you want to send this to a solicitor because I see you're in the middle of a mortgage application process? Sometimes they just don't want that because they're missing the metered charge that they can get when you're trying to communicate with this person. And that solicitor might be on the phone if you especially during COVID times when you can't go in person. That, hey, here's an email, send it to me. So your start point is digital, your end point is digital, but your connection point is not. It is because you're selecting a stack that is coming from the era of just very unidimensional communication. And they're trying to milk that because that's the only way that they know how to kind of set up the journey and the only way they know how to charge for it. And a lot of times they become their own enemies, because if this is the majority of your business, is the metered business, you're going to have a strong lobby for not going into the digital way, and you don't even know how to charge for it. So one of the things that we're kind of working with our partners and amplifying is that your usage models have changed as consumers. The people that are providing these solutions, their usage and consumption models have changed. They're not going into a back office in a certain particular office building and looking through files and seeing like, oh, is this Kane Sims? Is this matching his license that was issued 20 years ago? No, all of these things are already digitized. So you need to really find ways of providing that same experience and not try to circumvent the absolute deficiency you have on the connection channel, because that is the only thing that is not truly digitized.
That is so interesting. And it's like, I mean, the pipeline that you create from starting digitally and moving it into analog and then going digital again is just the amount of security holes in that are unbelievable. And then when you actually get there, you actually get to the solicitor's office and they don't even look at it. They don't even look at the ID that you've got and all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't have made a difference. And then I think half of the issue is that obviously the people that you actually deal with are people that work as solicitors and not the owners and stakeholders at a senior level of the business. And you're right, incentives are definitely aligned with time-based revenue.
Right.
And so there's no incentive when there's such a kind of like such a status quo that's embedded in such incumbent providers that have an interest in keeping things the same. But inevitably, as has happened with every other industry so far, change happens, doesn't it? Transformation comes, some disruptor comes from nowhere, and they've been built on digital business models, and they reinvent the whole situation. It happened
Precisely.
with it happened with the music industry. They couldn't figure
Mhm.
out how to charge for what they have, and all of a sudden, things move,
Yeah,
things change. The same thing happens with all kinds of different industries where the value that is exchanged changes because technology disrupts what that exchange or transaction should be in the future,
right.
and technology then facilitates a more efficient way of doing it. And then how do you charge for something that is now quicker, easier, and simpler when the assumption is that quick, easy, and simple is free because I've got access to it right here on my device?
Exactly.
um, yeah, it's
Yeah, it is a
interesting.
very it's a very multidimensional kind of problem. Not only it is the multidimensional thing that you're trying to solve in the human interaction aspect, but also how you're going to charge it from the business aspect, right? You just cannot uh, get to a point where it's like, no, that's just not something that we're going to charge for, because that is what people expect, right? You bring up the music industry and the way music consumption has changed, and it was considered sacrilege that, oh, you're providing these well, the first thing was like, you're providing the chorus of the song to listen, and maybe people would just find a way to download that and listen to that again. And everyone knows, like, all of these things that these are all funny stories to talk right now, but these were real blockers in business meetings several years ago. So I think that, yeah, there's either these stakeholders, they have been jaded, they've tried certain solutions that are like hacked on solutions to their base platform, and they don't work as seamlessly. Frustration in the agent, solicitor, specialist, technician group is extremely high, and they stop using it because they're like, you know what, I'm just going to ask these people to bring that in. I already have the copy. I know that they're coming in. I have a copy of their records on my computer. I'm just going to match those. So I think enabling that end-to-end experience with the security, with the seamlessness, is extremely important, because we're impatient beings, right? I mean, you look at the products and services that we use, we are going to transition from things that are very laborious, that take a lot of time and are cumbersome. And then it's
Mhm.
inevitable. And there's a lot of things that companies think, in specifically certain sectors, where they're like, the customer's captive. Well, the customer might be captive, but you look at the services that they have added on, you look at how their lives have changed and the multitude of things that they're buying and purchasing and using. And you might have that customer retention as an account, but the value of that account, the long-term value of that account, and the actual spend on that account might have gone down quite a bit, because there are
Mhm.
aspects of your business that are so backwards that they're maintaining their account. They might just do their check deposit, salary deposit with you, but everything other than the value-based services, the LTV services that you're investing on, they're not subscribing to, because they have found a better way of better company to do business with. So that's
Mhm.
something that we also try and talk to our customers, is like, not only understand that just an account retention doesn't mean anything. What is the LTV? And that is why these travel sites give you 3x of points when you're booking through your mobile app, because that is where they know is the most convenient, the most elegant way of consuming their product and services. And they want to transition you over there while they're working on getting the end-to-end pieces together from their analog and on-prem infrastructure. But at the same time, these on-prem systems and these databases, they are getting connected to the information highway through the internet. So having a platform that will do these data dips, really obey all of the security, the regional kind of regulations, is also extremely important, because that is why some of these might have gotten jaded in the past, is like, they're not following the CCPA, they're not following the GDPR, they're not following the opt-ins
Mhm.
for SMS and websites, and that's not negotiable, right? So then you can't fault the people to make the decisions that they have made in the past, where you're just not divulging that information, and when you don't divulge that information, there is no security hole. So
Mhm.
a lot of aspects are really important, and I think it's unfair to place the blame on a particular aspect of it. And essentially, that is why the architecture of platforms end to end, considering all these three different personas, becomes just it's indispensable. Unless you consider all of those three, you're not going to have a success rate that you're envisioning.
I suppose the same would be true advice for if you're not even thinking about platforms or technology, but you're thinking about the program itself. A digital transformation program needs to involve those three kind of stakeholders, and I think you also, would it be a fair assumption to hypothesize that the industries that firstly, to piggyback on actually what you were saying, that I'm definitely a believer that everybody makes the right call at the time based on that agile manifesto principle of everyone makes the right decision at the
Right.
time based on their knowledge, experience, and resources. And so a lot of industries like that that we've been talking about are actually in fact heavily regulated, and so there's little wriggle room in places as well.
Yeah.
But would it be a fair assumption or a fair hypothesis to make that some of the industries that are perhaps lagging behind as far as this kind of like customer experience automation would be those regulated industries, like maybe property or solicitors or legal or insurance potentially, although there's some good stuff happening there. And the
Right.
organization or the industries that are pushing it forward are the ones that are perhaps more obviously driven by commercial incentives around retention and stuff like that. Retail, you mentioned travel a few times, where there is definitely a repeat purchase and a kind of higher customer lifetime value potential. Is that a fair assumption, or is there any curveballs that you would throw into that kind of
Yeah, I
hypothesis?
think it is a trend. I think it is just a trend that, and a greenfield's always going to be a little bit easier because you don't have to get a sample size that's strong enough to knock over the status quo, right? So I do feel that sometimes, though, that these heavily regulated industries and all that, they are more comfortable. They are just more comfortable till they see their business slipping away, and then that's when they really jump into it. And when they really dig down deep into, like, we've really not lost that many users, but our earnings are down, or why are they? We see a bunch of our users really requesting a plugin or using this particular plugin to this particular service. So I think it's not just one. It can be a blanket statement that it's just the regulated industries that are doing. Arguably, mobile check deposit came from the most regulated industry, so it is. I think it is just the focus. There needs to be focus on understanding, like, why are so many neobanks getting the attention that they're getting? Why is there so much disruption in the financial industry? Why is there so much disruption in healthcare? A lot of times it is because you're looking at aspects of your business that are very superficial. You're just looking at the top line, where it's like, oh, one line segment says that you're not losing customers, but is their spend really going up, or is it going down? What are they using? Are their online purchases something that they're using your account for? Maybe not, because you just don't have the plugin into Apple Pay, Android Pay, stuff like that. So I definitely feel there is a little more roadblocks and a little more kind of work to be done for whoever's embarking on this journey of providing an amazing state of customer experience at these heavily regulated industries. But at the same time, I think the InfoSec teams have already gone through the same digital acquaintance phase that they have allowed for you to log into your mobile apps with Touch ID, Face ID, pattern on Android, and so on and so forth. So if they have already done that, and if you're trying to change something, you're trying to make a payment, and they've allowed you to go through that with that simple user experience manner, it's not true that they are the blockers. They just need to see that there is enough evidence that you're not going to see an unencrypted copy of this particular invoice out on the ether, and that your practices are really strong. And a lot of times also the companies that are providing these solutions, they evolve from just serving very unregulated SMB businesses, and then they're trying to go after enterprise. I think that is also something that as entrepreneurs and a lot of people can think about is that if you are going to go for enterprise, you should really have that. And not to toot our own horn, but we had SOC 2 Type 2 certification even before we had a website. We had HIPAA and SOC 2 in the first 29 months of existence. So we were very much focused on going to enterprise, and that's how we kind of went that. And the beauty of that is all that is translatable to mid-market and SMB. So because even mid-market and SMB today have to completely adhere to the GDPR requirements, the data retention requirements, the CCP requirements here in California. So we strongly felt that it wasn't time wasted to put in security as a foundational piece of the platform, as opposed to just getting quickly out to market. And time will tell how that success looks like.
Interesting. Well, I think it's a sound approach, isn't it, to basically make the thing bulletproof. And if you can make it bulletproof and you can sell to very large, kind of very strict organizations, then it's just like it's a no-brainer for the smaller companies, isn't it? Oh, right. Oh, what you mean you've sold to such and such and such and such, and you've got all of those kind of situations in place. It kind of makes it
it's a
makes it
combination.
easy.
I do feel that it's the early adopters. It is the people that matter, right? It is the people that are focused on that user experience, whether they're small companies or big companies. But yeah, I mean, we were the first in the industry that said, like, yeah, we're not going to store your recordings. And that really put a lot of the CISOs, the security architects at ease, and like, oh, okay, so we're like, it's your choice.
What do you do? Transcribe them, or is it an option to store them?
We can transcribe them and have either it as an attachment to your CRM customer record, and that take pub inside the confined environment that goes with the rules and permissions of how long the agent can see it and not, how the audit teams have access to it. So your operational logistics don't change at all. Or if there's a regulation that this needs to be at a media server at this particular location, we pipe that into that media server if it needs to be in a multimedia format. So I think things like that, where you don't just get so hyper focused on like, oh, but I can charge for these recordings so much after retaining them for 3 months, and there's no way that this company can get out of it. I think that mindset is also something that that we'll see people come around to, and it's like, what is really important here? Is it providing great customer experience where you can start selling more and more of the stack to them, or you have this like almost extortion revenue by keeping these? And yes, it's a cash cow, but is that a value-added service as opposed to a service that soon will be replaced?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a one-way ticket to nowhere, isn't it? It's like I was reading a story about how the McDonald's milkshake machines always break because they're only in the contract. There's one company that can provide them, and there is a known problem with them that only an engineer that works at that company can fix. And it turns out that something like 40% of that company's revenue comes from repairs, and so it's the incentives. How the incentives align for the incumbents is often the thing, isn't it? But yeah, definitely that it sounds as though what you're onto is basically a more ethical, disruptive business model, because there's incumbents right now that do call recording and storage and charge for that kind of stuff. So it's disruptive, but it's ethical at the same time, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, we want to provide value-based services. We want to provide services that are very, very much looking at user experience and security as the foundational principles, because we are in a day and age where people do not want to read manuals. Gone are the days when you're like, hey, the implementation fees are this much, and they're so large because our technology is so complex. It's going to take 6 months for training, implementation, and all that. Well, guess what? People are going to see through that. It's not. We are at a time where, especially in this sector, that the technology is there. And as a technologist, I feel that this is one of the very rare instances where I am building something that is adapting to a behavioral change that has happened almost 14 years ago. But it's just that the sector has been a little bit void of user experience. And looking at selling value-added services as opposed to just connectivity services.
Interesting. I love it. Anand, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been enlightening. I knew it would be enlightening, but it has been more enlightening than perhaps I would have expected. It has been fantastic. Thank you very much. Where can people go to learn more about UJET and find out a bit more about what you do and perhaps get their hands on the technology?
Yeah, so you can go to ujet.cx. I know with this lighting it's a little bit poor, but ujet.cx, and yeah, there are solutions for every shape and size of businesses. The beauty of customer experience is that you are in the end catering to customers. We're all consumers and customers. Please go to our website and see which of the aspects of our technology, which our technological stack, our user experience really resonate with you. And yeah, the hyper-personalized journeys are what we are in to provide, as opposed to just a particular package. I think I touched on the business side of it, and the simplicity of doing business is also what we focus on. And as a result, you can look at our Jutru crowd reviews, where we've been rated in the highest in customer satisfaction, ease of doing business for the last 7 quarters.
Wow, nice. That's impressive. Well, Anand, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Likewise.
everyone, for joining us, whether you're tuning in on LinkedIn, YouTube, or listening back on the podcast. Do check out ujet.cx. Really cool domain name, that ujet.cx. I didn't realize you could get a CX domain name. That's a nice, nice little hack there. I'll have to try and find one for VUX, vux.cx. But check out, I'm going to say vux.cx there. Check out ujet.cx, definitely, to learn more. And we'll put links in the show notes. We'll stick Anand's LinkedIn and stuff like that in there. Anand, if you're happy to connect with anyone who wants to learn more.
That would be great. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, everyone.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And if you're not yet subscribed, do go to vux.world/subscribe if you want to get 1, invites to these live broadcasts, 2, the recaps of these broadcasts, and 3, industry insights and analysis in the field of customer experience automation, with a particular focus on natural language processing technologies and artificial intelligence technologies. That is me and Anand. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next Tuesday when we'll be speaking to Scott Stevenson, CEO of Deepgram, all about the speech recognition revolution. They've just released a new study with a whole bunch of new data. So we're going to be looking at speech recognition use cases, accuracy, AI ethics, and the value that that provides. So do join us next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, see you soon.